What's up guys, Koma here, and welcome to the final shape for one. It is currently week 1 of the final shape, and the raid and the new 12-man activity has now come. So we are in the last few days of the final shape launch week, but more importantly, next week Echo starts, and a lot of new stuff will be accessible from here on out. But today, I want to bring you a quick Warlock build. So I made a Warlock for most people who really haven't noticed throughout the channel, and I am a real huge fan of Stasis Warlock. So I did a Stasis Warlock build for Nezarec's Sin and Graviton not too long ago, and this is exactly that build. We just got a few upgrades thanks to Prismatic. So for any people who have somehow been living under a rock under the Destiny 2 sphere, Prismatic Warlock is focused all around Bleak Watcher. Now, Stasis turrets are kind of a key staple of Stasis Warlock, but previously a lot of people typically ran Ozymancy gloves, which allows you to hold one more cold snap grenade, and then if you throw a cold snap out and it, hits on a direct impact, it'll give you some recharge rate, and you can chain a bunch of stuff. But there's a few missing key things that Stasis Warlock as a whole is missing over this, and that's mainly Ice Flare bolts. Now, how exactly does Prismatic make up for this? Namely in a lot of its other fragments and abilities that we have access to, mainly Feed the Void, and some of the fragments including Facet of Purpose, where I'm going to get even more Devour. We can even acquire Radiant and a whole 9 yards. But let's start off with the basics here. First of all, why Nezarec and why Graviton? Well, I think it's no surprise that Graviton is probably one of the strongest scout rifles there is around currently. It's really on par with Sunshot, despite them really getting that AoE nerf by 10% damage. These weapons are still extremely good, and Graviton with Warpable Weapon and Turnabout is still vastly better than I think any other pulse rifle I've used. I think the only pulse rifle that really equals up that I was using during the campaign was Red Death. As most people can, probably expect, final blows of this weapon cure you and increase reload speed, and reloading after final blows cures nearby allies. So this thing could be really synergized really well with a solar subclass. But Graviton is going to be synergizing directly with Nezarec's Sin. For most people who don't understand how Nezarec works, void damage kills increase ability energy recharge rate. This helmet has been seeing a lot of use outside of just Void itself back during Season of the Wish, as a lot of people started picking it up for Strand, mainly with Mindspun Invocation, but I picked it up for Stasis last season and started working on a Graviton build when we had mainly Overload Pulse Rifle, which, fun fact, this season is actually Anti-Barrier Pulse, which makes this build even more interesting. So basically, on kill, you will have a timer. That timer will continue to expand as you get more kills. Additionally, the recharge rate that you will have for your grenade and your melee is 200%, while your, not necessarily recovery, but your class ability and your super will have a 300% boost. Now, arguably, there was a comment someone left on my video asking about the difference between Verities and Nezarec, is that if you wear Verities, it'll be a maxed out 500% damage boost as long as you are as long as you're matching the damage type of your grenade. So if I run Graviton with Vortex and I get ×5 the Verity boost, it'll be a 500% increase onto my grenade. And that's an option that you could run as well. But I like running Nezarec because, number one, looks cool, feels cool, and number one, I really can't shade Verity all that well. But let's go into the subclass and let's talk about what we are doing here. Now, Prismatic does have access to Transcendence. Generally, you're going to have really no problem going for Transcendence on this build, but it's not really my forefront, so it's there as like an optional thing if you want to spec into it. So the aspects we are running are Bleak Watcher, which allows you to change your grenade into a stasis turret. So again, another key thing that Warlock has really always been, had a hold of on Stasis Warlock, but now we have Feed the Void. Now, I've tested out a ton of synergized systems with, before the final shape, trying to mix Devour with Warlock, and never really found a good use or good way to do it besides running specific exotics. So this one, on the other hand, is actually going to allow that. So thankfully, with Feed the Void on here, the Devour effects are actually improved, restoring additional health and additional grenade energy. So how are we using this? Well, for one, you can choose whatever nade you want. I'm running Vortex Nade, but I found that running Healing Nade is actually much faster cooldown. But considering how much Devour we're going to be getting from our super being Nova Bomb and Facet of Purpose, basically every single time I pick up an orb, it's going to be giving me more, energy in the whole 9 yards for my grenades, and I'm not just going to be getting an overshield as well. Healing Grenade always seemed the lowest, but if you're kind of being more aggressive and you're wanting to play more ad clear roles, Storm Grenade or Vortex Grenade are probably going to be your go-to. Storm Grenade is probably going to have lower cooldown, so there is that. Again, there's also cold snaps here if you're wanting to go on and freeze more targets, but I like just running healing or vortex simply because it just feels better in my opinion. The grenades are much more stronger options. And then your melees, here I have really two options that I like to run. I like to run Incinerator Snap and Arcane Needle. Arcane Needle just has much longer range, and Incinerator Snap has a fan which allows you to ignite enemies. And speaking of ignite, that goes over to our aspects, which thankfully we have Facet of Ruin, where it increases the size and damage of the burst when you shatter a stasis crystal or frozen target and increases the area of effect of solar ignitions. So if I'm running this and I'm also running Incinerator Snap, not only is my ignition going to be bigger, but so is my shatter from my Bleak Watcher. Going to Facet of Dawn, where powered melee hits against targets make you radiant, powered melee final blows make you and nearby allies radiant. Exactly the same way as the solar one works, except that on just melee hits, powered melee hits, it'll make you radiant, but if you get a kill with it, it'll make nearby allies radiant. There's a little bit of difference here, but it's also worth noting that it's still really good for personal use, so yeah. Facet of Purpose, depending on my super, depends on what buff I get for survivability, I guess. So I'm running Void, and this means I will be getting an overshield. Going on to Facet of Protection, while surrounded by combatants, you're more resistant to incoming damage, while Transcendent, the effect is increased, which this is kind of like a no-brainer. Always kind of running this one, unless you're, sitting back and doing something else. And then, of course, we have Facet of Balance, where it states rapidly defeating targets with light damage grants you melee energy, and rapidly defeating targets with darkness damage grants you grenade energy. So this goes on top of even more Bleak Watcher shenanigans, because if we freeze a bunch of targets nearby one another and shatter them, it's going to pretty much refund a bunch of our grenade energy on top of, what we already have going with Devour and Nezarec. So my super really doesn't matter here. The only reason I'm really running Nova Bomb is because I previously thought this granted Devour because I expected it was something to do with a bunch of regen and health, but no, it only gives Overshield. So I would probably only run Needle Storm, or if you want, run Song of Flame, because Needle Storm will grant you Woven Mail, but Song of Flame will grant you Restoration. So some could argue that Devour is already restoring your health, so if you don't like that option, you simply swap to Needle Storm and just do the Woven Mail, but you can also run Winter's Wrath, but you're really going to be missing out on a ton of little damage that Needle Storm can access. but it is good for add control and add clear. And I think Song of Flame talks on its own. There's really no need to, talk about Song of Flame, as this thing is overall extremely busted. Yeah, that's pretty much everything. I think this build holds up really well. Me and my team were messing around in the first encounter for Salvation's Edge, and I was running a variant of this build where I wasn't running Bleak Watcher, I was simply running Helion, Vortex Grenade, Arcane Needle, and I was running a Blinding Grenade GL, so I was running this Malicious Birthright, and it was simply just holding itself up really well, because I could control ads, I could, get Devour up, I can have Helion assisting me with a bunch of additional ad clear, and really, it was a really fun time. So yeah, hopefully everybody here enjoys this build. I'm gonna have some gameplay of me just probably running around the Pale Heart, doing some overthrow, and showing you how much uptime I can really have on this build. So if you guys enjoyed the build and you find it useful or informative in some way, you can always like and share. It goes a very far way of helping the channel. And of course, there's always subscribing, that if you want to come back long term and look at other builds, I will be posting a Hunter one soon after. I don't know how soon, it just depends on whenever I get there. So yeah, I hope you guys really find it informative, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Adios.
push, you gotta